I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Morning all. Morning. Call the meeting to order. Is there any additions or subtractions on the agenda? All right,
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries. Minutes from the 14th.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the minutes from the 14th. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries. General public concerns.
Well, I asked to be put on the agenda, and they said, no, you would just deal with me now. I don't know if you're gonna get it done in 15 minutes or not. Eric, you misstated. You said there's no drainage today. There is drainage today.
Okay, I was just looking at the agenda, Gary.
On DD 6, and it's been cleaned out. Rick and Travis have done a great job. They've leveled the bank, picked up rocks, getting the final stages of it done. But then I started checking and find out that all drainage warrants, before they're assessed, before they're levied, you guys are charging 6% interest. In visiting with Kim several times in the last couple of weeks, there are bills out there from 2018 that have not been levied yet. There's not a drainage district in the county that has a positive balance, which means there is a lot of warrants collecting 6% on landowners that don't know that.
That's not entirely true, Gary. There are positive balances in a lot of accounts.
Well, Kim didn't know, hadn't seen any. So, okay, so not all of them, but
Yeah.
a good majority. And going back to 2018, that's 4 years now. And then I read in the paper, well, you rescind the fact that you're gonna try and levy now, because Kim said it was past the deadline. I don't ever recall of having a deadline for levying drainage districts.
Iowa code says you levy them twice a year, and you have to have them in before a 30-day notice, just like property taxes.
Well,
As a point of clarification on the time frame, they go out at the same time as the property taxes?
Yes, so they have to be
So it is-
notified beginning of August, or the September taxes at the beginning of, before February 1st for the March tax.
So they're on the same time frame as the taxes?
And wasn't the one that was rescinded the one with Wright County?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was, because they only do it one time a year.
so you're gonna have the ones that, there are some being levied now?
Oh, yeah.
As far as I know, they are. The one that was rescinded was the one with Wright County that we have a joint with them. And they only do in the fall, so there's no sense in us, doing it and them not doing it, because it won't be done properly. Am I correct?
Right.
Well, the paper didn't say there was just one, you said you rescinded the levies.
I think all those, I think there was like
At least 6 or 8.
six, I think there was six, and I think they all got rescinded, yes, because they missed the deadline.
Okay?
All right, then I was wrong.
That's what I believe.
And I cannot blame Kim. I don't know when she was hired, but she hasn't been on that job more than 15 months.
Right, this is probably...
There's a lot she does not know, and you can't blame her. This Trish has been busy learning the final things of the auditor's office. There's nobody there to teach her. And if you don't know the questions to ask, how are you gonna learn? She doesn't even know those. She hasn't been associated with drainage. And you could have hired anybody, and they'd been in the same situation as Kim. She's doing a good job of what she's doing, but she can't do it, you know, she's learning. And now she's gotta go back and recheck some stuff and stuff. But the thing is, the way things are being done now with work orders, they're put out there, they get started, you have no way, you have no contracts. They're just work orders out there that have been given to contractors. There's no way out there to enforce or keep them busy on the job. They can work 3 months, go work someplace else 3 months, come back. And so, if they get a partial payment, we're paying 6% interest on that partial payment. And they don't get their final payment, and it can't be levied till the whole project's done. So, I mean, that's the gripe that I have. And I know now, I think the maximum you can levy with, you can put out without a bid is $139,000, if I'm not...
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so there's a lot of projects, big projects, that you can do for less than $139,000. And if that contractor wants partial payment, those landowners are gonna start being billed 6% interest on those partial payments. I think they need to do something to control that. I don't know what it is, whether you had a blanket, boilerplate contract to use for some of those smaller ones. Not every tube, not every broken tile thing, but when you get to a cleanout project or something that's a branch tile that runs a fair distance, I think you should have something with a time frame on it and that to control it, so you can do it. And keep track of it, to make sure. I was happy last year when I read, you guys are having a checklist, so you can keep track of these contracts and stuff to make sure they're getting done in a timely manner. Oh, guess what? That don't apply to non-contract items.
Mhm.
So, what good is that, that's not helping us. I'd hate to say how many thousands of farmers out there, when they find out and hear the 6% interest on warranties. DD-10 finished and was final hearing already almost a year ago. They still have not been billed. I think it might be in this levy now, I don't know.
September of 19. I've got jobs I got paid for 3 years ago, but I'm a landowner in there, I haven't been billed yet. And I got landowners who've been saving money for 3 years because they know the bill's coming. When? So, that moves, and then, I have one other question, that 6%, does that go into the drainage district fund where those landowners paid it? Or does that go into the general fund? Because it'd be nice to have a little surplus in them drainage accounts to pay for a beaver dam or a pipe or some trees, just some general maintenance that you don't have to levy for a big thing.
Right?
And then, as to Gary's point, on the landowners that have money, don't wanna pay the interest, because can they just come in and buy the bond? Then the interest is a wash for them.
I don't know.
That's a question. Jana?
I know we've had discussions earlier that sometimes the contractor who does the project buys them, but, or the engineering company would buy them, but lately, they haven't been putting any out to the public, have we, Jana?
No, the county has no funds, the problem, and it does speed up the process. We own them.
But I can see Gary's point, that's something we probably should get more aggressive on to keep track of when projects get done and get them levied.
I got a question for you guys. How many of you guys have worked with Kim in the last 15 months to see how drainage is going?
I think all of us.
Because if you don't ask, work with her and see where she needs help, and sees how things are going, you can't, like I said, if she don't know what to ask, how's she gonna know?
Yeah, it could be.
Because some of these questions on warrants and stuff, I started asking her, and then she went to Janet to find out what it was. Now, Janet told me roughly $2 million of warrants she has. Okay, they're not all 6%.
Mhm.
She told me that, because some of these long projects are reduced to a
Yeah.
long payment down to 3%. But still, that's $100,000, if you take 5% on an average,
Easy figuring, yeah.
that's approximately $100,000 a year. The county is getting into the treasury that is it comes from non-tax revenue. But it is tax revenue, it's taxed because it's the landowners that are paying those fees, that 6% on drainage warrants.
And that's because they elected to waiver. If they paid in full, we would
Yeah.
have to without
But that's you guys' business.
The farmer decides if they're gonna waiver or not.
Well, but the Board of Supervisors
But
asked...
that's what you're saying, from when the project gets done to when it gets levied.
No, I'm talking from the day you start paying supplemental or intermediate payments, you know, to that contractor. You know, sometimes it's tile, well, then he's using that, but you're still paying him.
Right.
It's still being assessed to the district. From the time you write that first check to him to pay some of those costs, we're getting billed 6%. And so that starts accumulating before that project's even done. And the Board of Supervisors acting as trustees, because when you guys were each elected, you were elected to the position of a trustee of the drainage districts in the county, unless the district decides to elect their own trustees. And I don't think there's a district in the county that has their own trustees. There wasn't 40 years ago, and I don't think there is today. And now, as I understand it, I haven't seen the maps, two of the supervisors, whoever they may be after the election, will cover the majority of the rural area of the county. So does that mean the other three that have Dakota City and the town of Humboldt aren't gonna deal with drainage at all? They're gonna be responsible for it, but are you gonna get out there and look and follow what's going on?
I have, areas in Corinth and South Weaver, and do I know everything there is to know about drainage? But no, I rely on Eric and Rick. Eric has taken me to a few of those, showed me them, and to help, and I grew up on a farm, so I understand drainage, but do I know every nuance? No. But that's why we're all here as a board, because each one of us has a specialty and an understanding of how things go. So we have to work as a team
Well, I
to do
agree
what's
with that,
best.
but you've gotta have a knowledge, a little bit of knowledge of what the law says. Another article, part in the last week's paper, you have a little piece of land over in the southeast corner of over in the corner by Highway 17 and 3, I think it is, where land was annexed to a drainage district 10 years ago, 2010, 11 years ago, 12 almost. Who did it, who was on the board at that time, I don't know.
None of us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Were you on the board that time?
Yes.
He was retired.
I'm just asking, because we don't know who was on the board at that
No, I know.
time.
Okay, so that's not the point. The point is, whoever was on the board at that time made a mistake.
Right.
Because if it was gonna be annexed, it should have been classified at that time.
Should've,
Should've.
Yeah,
but it didn't.
but it should be classified
And there,
now.
I do
Right.
believe that from history, which we've been talking a lot about that project, there was a change in our drainage clerk at that time. I think possibly that's why it got dropped.
Well, the point is, the comment that you made, Rick, quoted in the paper said, well, part of that drains into a natural stream, those farmers aren't gonna like that, we don't wanna get them upset. There is a lot of area in drainage districts in this county that are in drainage districts that never utilize that drainage ditch, but the law says if you're in that district, you still pay.
Our maps don't even show them in the district. That's what I was going by, 'cause
Oh.
all of our maps, we don't have a map of that land anywhere. Our information stops at Highway 17.
You gotta remember,
That's the maps we got,
all of this, annexed ground is in Wright County,
yeah.
it's not in Humboldt County.
Well, then, but who's the controlling interest of the district?
We are.
We would be, because it would, they wanted, the story that we have on it, it's just a joint, was it 9 is the Humboldt County
Yeah.
district, and is it, it's 230 something or other, Wright County, and like you said, you know the story on it, it got, annexed, but never reclassified, so it just kinda died for, you know, lack of
So,
movement.
is there any way, are you gonna assess anything on it, that district needs assessing?
Well, we can't right now, because they never finished the annexation problem back, action back in 20...
So it never was really totally...
No, it was never annexed in
Okay.
officially.
No.
We don't have a map showing it, 'cause, you know, and we don't know if that is actually a drainage ditch, where it'd be dumping into, or if it's natural creek. We really don't know that.
Yeah, but see, most of your drainage ditches dump into a natural stream.
Yes, they do.
And more often than not, that's where they end. Yep.
Yeah.
Not always,
Yeah.
sometimes they improve the natural
Well,
structural
right
rate.
now, where Rick and Travis are digging the trees out is beyond 150 feet of the drainage.
Yes, we have an agreement, and we
Yep.
checked with the DNR on that we can remove the blockages. Went through all the formal,
Yeah.
talking to the landowners, got permission from them.
Just in that little stretch, we've removed 3 beaver dams already.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they've
And
been,
pieces of an old bridge.
Yeah.
I know when that fell in, I was farming that.
But just to Gary's point on contractors, we move for different reasons. We only work for the county doing drainage work. We started a week ago, we've already moved to 4 different jobs. And when the people are out, it's like, oh, we gotta farm, or we gotta plant this, or we wanna seed this, so. We ain't jumping around and go do private tile somewhere, it's just, it's county work, it's just, who's yelling the biggest, kinda
Yeah.
what it comes down to.
And-
And I'm not telling you guys anything, I appreciate your work, 'cause I know how many phone calls you get, great job. It's mostly phone calls about someone's upset. Appreciate all you guys and raising your hand and sitting in the seat, that's not easy to do.
And, you know, to your comment about, and maybe we do need to get more aggressive on the levying of these smaller districts, you know, where there's smaller repairs, rather than sitting with a bill there.
Well, we always tried, and times change, and that, when I was on the board, 4 of the supervisors at that table were all farmers.
Well, we talked to the state about that, 'cause we sent down our district plans and they rejected them. And
How many times?
Well,
Several.
and you,
Well, I'm not saying the districts were
They did
wrong,
the- they did the
do it,
same
but
thing
I'm
in
just saying
Webster
at that time, 4 of us were farmers, so we were
Mhm.
physically and financially involved with drainage.
yeah,
And so we, you know, it was there, we were out, it lived out in the area,
Yeah.
so we kept an eye on what was going on and not. The other thing with DD 6, on the upper branch, which I'm on, starts up at Highway 3 and comes down. Well, 4 years ago or so, after the tile project was done north of Highway 3, somebody up there said, well, that tile's being blocked, so, well, they wanted to clean up. Well, instead of starting at the bottom and cleaning up to there, they started up there and worked down. And that's because, that's the way the job order was given to Rick. And so, it wasn't him, but it's not common sense, because when he got down to Highway Roosevelt, where the tube was all partially plugged, because the tube was put in wrong, and secondary roads won't dig it up and change it, it's tilted the wrong direction, so the output side is 1.5 feet higher than the input side. And they say, well, that doesn't affect the flow. Well, when the input side is above underwater, yeah, it's affecting the volume going through that tube. But secondary road says, well, we aren't gonna change it. But that project, instead of cleaning the upper 2 feet, they should have started down at the blacktop by my place and gone up. So when Rick got to that, up to that point and cleaned that tube out, he had about another 300 to 400 feet. He had to go dig out what has silted in the last 3 years. So, I mean, you guys gotta, just because you get a project or a quest to do something, look at the big picture. Because that isn't happening. You guys look at the big picture, and you gotta look and see what's going on out there. It isn't fair to the farmer, it isn't fair to the landowner. And right now, you've got a lot of absentee landlords that don't live in the county anymore, it's bare ground. They don't like getting drainage bills, for one, so they don't want any drainage done. And the tenant, you know, he has nothing to say if he wants to keep the land. So, I mean, it's a completely different situation than it was 40 years ago.
that's true.
But, I mean, you gotta use some common sense and look at these things more, and I appreciate, you know, the fact that, I know Sandy didn't know nothing about drainage before she got on the board, but it's...
I knew something about it. My grandparents' farm was right by a drainage ditch, so I know about drainage.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know all the nuances. I don't think anybody here knows. Rick is on Idell. You're the vice president, aren't you?
And, yeah,
And,
I'm
I
president
mean...
right now.
Oh, that's right.
don't understate it.
Okay. Sorry about that, but...
And I'm the first one to admit, every time we do a drainage project, I learn something new.
Yeah.
Because there's just,
So do we.
something comes up all the time.
Yeah.
Whenever you start digging, you find out something new.
And I think everybody here is willing to investigate and learn. I don't think any of us, I know Bruce talks about going out and driving around in the country and looking at things, so I kinda think that's kind of an unfair statement, Gary, that we're not willing to go out and...
Well, I'm not saying you're
You know.
not willing, but I'm saying, in the future, if only 2 supervisors are covering most of the rural area of the county, it shouldn't be just left up to them to monitor all these things. The other thing is, why on these projects are you having and paying an engineer? You're not paying him, the landowner's paying him. And it's good, you ought to make sure it's being installed properly. But to pay them and have them come every 2 days to monitor what's being done, when years ago, of course, we didn't have other jobs other than our supervisor in our meetings, we had the time to go look and monitor and see what was being done. Did we know exactly all the engineering aspects of everything that was being done? No, but we knew enough that if something didn't look right, we could question it.
Well, you know what, Gary, whether you know it or not, you're actually given a general synopsis of what this board has been doing, at least as long as I've been here. I have the largest geographical area in the country. I'm not gonna tell you I look at every tile repair, but I have looked at a lot, and I do look at a lot, and you can ask Rick and Travis. If it's in my area, and sometimes if it's in Sandy's area, because I have gone out with Sandy, we look at it, Rick is correct. It's been a learning process. We've seen things that you're bringing up that we're all aware of. I don't think you've said anything we aren't aware of, that we are doing our due diligence to improve. We would like to see the expediency in the levying process. We would like to see the projects done as timely and quickly as possible. Sometimes there's things that you can control on that, and sometimes there's things that you can't, weather being the number one.
Yeah.
And so, everything you've said is basically a synopsis of everything that we are doing our due diligence to accomplish. Is it perfect? No. Will it ever be? No. But have we made improvements? Yes, because we've looked at the steps to hold contractors accountable. You mentioned engineering. We've made, especially with the increase in the amount of projects without requiring engineering, up to $139,000 in bid process, we do look after the districts, because we realize our important job as trustees, that's just looking after someone's money. We don't wanna spend more than needs to be spent for the landowners in the drainage district. And, you know, like I say, the levying process perfect? No. There's times there, like Gianna mentioned, you've got twice a year, sometimes you've got once a year if it's a joint district. So, we operate under certain constraints, but you gave a great synopsis of everything that we know and that we're working on. And I'm glad that you're taking, an interest in it. You know, you're a supervisor, you're a landowner, you have a greater interest, and we all do too. And everything that's been said is correct. I mean, I've looked at stuff with Dave, with Sandy, Bruce, Rick, myself. We do look at stuff, and we do wanna save the landowners money, whether it's not engineering and adding another $20,000-$30,000 to a project, or it's just the expediency of getting it done and getting it levied. So, we're doing our darndest, I really mean that. And like Rick said, you do learn something every time, and we've adjusted. Will it ever be perfect? No, but can it be better? Yes. There you have it.
Well, on levying these districts that, are in the negative, a lot of them are small, and and I'm not saying that we did it perfect, or if that's the way you need to do it now, but we would look at the amount of activity that had happened in that district in the last 5 years or something, if it was just a couple broken in tile, we levy a little extra just to have a little bit there to cover it.
We still do that.
Yeah.
It's still being done.
Yep.
But I think when you're re-levying, you should levy for a positive balance on every...
That's the goal. That's the goal.
That $139,000 we just got.
Yeah, I know.
It was 50 before.
Yeah.
Most projects are over 50, so you gotta have the engineer. Now we don't have to.
There were projects that were, when you were at 20,000, the contractor would bill $19,600 to be below that, so there was no question.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's the other side,
Or you clean a mile or two and then come back in a couple of years and clean up a couple more miles.
yeah.
You worked around the law a little bit.
But then you were, like you said, that's what you did with DD6 Upper Branch, and it cost us more because we had to go back and dig out a little bit more that silted in the meantime, that should have flushed on down.
Like I said, given your extremely accurate synopsis.
The thing was, on 6 there was a tile project up there. The bulkhead, when they took the bulkhead out, they had a huge rain and washed a whole bunch of soil into that ditch. That is why they cleaned there south of Highway 3 a little ways. It was due to the fact of all the dirt that silted in. And then one of the landowners who was part of the tile project put a petition in to clean 6. And then we did. That was not part of the tile
But if
project.
you're gonna do 6, you should have done it from the bottom end, but...
Well, you know what? And we know that.
Petition to do it.
And we know that.
Because of
The
the
cleanout was part
$50,000.
of the cleanout was part of the tile project. That little cleanout from 3 to Roosevelt was part of the tile project because of the silt that came in from the tile project.
Yeah, I know they cleaned that out a couple hundred feet down from the tile, so it would drain.
Yeah.
Then you got the rest of it, but it should have been the whole stretch down to the mains.
We know that.
Open ditch.
Yeah.
So Rick and Travis know that, we know that, we know that
Well,
the
then
pipe was
let's make sure we
installed.
don't do that again.
And we haven't. We've done some other projects since then, and it certainly is starting at the outlet, working your way up.
Okay, then east of me, and I've talked to Rick, and Rick's asked me about it, it's right along the right along the blacktop, C-48, where it's come through, and we had a slip off, Marshall come in, fixed it up, but without any virgin soil underneath it, it's not gonna hold, and it didn't, it slid down because there's water coming through a 4x4 tube under the road, blasts against that side of the ditch, which helps, plus water's pooling in Sandman's above the ditch, coming through underground, and that softened that and it all slid out. And I guess it's eating away a little at the roadside. But my idea, and you know, you've talked about moving the whole drainage ditch over, which I don't think is cost effective for one thing, and I suggested, you know, driving in steel piling along the road there where it's washing back out, so it'll have something to hold, backfill it then, so you do have a shoulder right in that area, and do the same on the other side of the ditch where the water comes through the tube, and blasts out that side of the ditch, so it has a buffer there to, instead of hitting the soil, it's hitting something to keep from eroding it. But we played with that, that's been, well, that heavy rain, I don't know, 5 years ago? Okay. That slough off, it hasn't been there that long, but around the bend, there's several slough offs that are still there. And from that slough off, between there and my place, the Y, there's, this curlicue or snaking because it's all filled in with silt. So that should have been, you know, needs to get taken care of.
Another thing that we've noticed and talked about, and Rick and Travis are here and as contractors, over the many years, there's many miles of drainage ditches in this county. The maintenance on the ditch themselves has been very lax. It's so plugged up that nothing's working, we better do something. And, you know, I don't know, maybe some of us will live long enough, or care long enough, or at least get the practice in place to move forward, that there's more of a maintenance schedule on these ditches. Whether, you know, so it isn't just an extreme problem where it's just not working, we have no drainage, that we have to do something, that we can go in and do more of a maintenance. In other words, as far as cleaning out a ditch goes, instead of taking 4 feet out of the bottom of a ditch, maybe we can get it to take 2 feet out of the bottom of the ditch. It's more cost effective, you can address and remedy any of the bank failures, which, speaking of bank failures, more often than not, as I've seen contractors, Rick and Travis being one of them, but not the only ones, a lot of times where those sand pockets are and the continual sloughing, you do dig that out, you do not replace it with dirt, you replace it with a rip-rap type material, pack that in, get it to stabilize, and that's been around roads, it's been out in the middle of the sections, it's been different places, but a habitual spot because of the soil structure, There's been a lot of them, there's a lot of them around the county, there's some in Sandy's area, there's some in everybody's area. And the contractors have found where they've seen this habitual bank sloughing, let's address that with, rip wrapping, chunks of concrete, pack that in, get the bank back where it's supposed to be. They typically hold. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but that generally does work.
No, you're right, you do the maintenance a little quicker.
Yeah, the maintenance and the bank thing, once you've had experience with, this is a habitual spot, because of what Gary said. He's given us a great synopsis of everything that we know.
Well,
It's
the
got,
other thing is sod.
yeah,
And when you got 4 foot of slough in the bottom.
Yeah.
Well, the water's sitting up 8 foot.
and it saturates the banks continuously.
The whole bank.
Yep.
And the worst thing for us to fix is bank slough falls.
Yep.
I can't use the dirt I take out. Am I gonna haul new dirt in? Well, it better be clay.
Yeah.
And then I'm dealing with the soil structure that's already there. If it's already sand, I'm kinda screwed.
And I've seen it, what you guys have done, I've seen it where other spots, and Rick hits the nail on the head, that lack of maintenance has caused the water level to rise. And granted, like you said, Gary, 5 years ago, we had torrential rains for 4 years in a row. That didn't help matters any. But still, that can come, and then that if you have the level of the ditch where it belongs, the water moves nicely along, doesn't back up, doesn't build up on the sides and keep them habitually saturated. So it's a vicious circle. If you have that, you're gonna have more bank failure. So,
Well, my ditch was cleaned in 1954.
how about that?
And then it was done now, and then actually in my end, Rick said, there was very, very little that he dug out in the first half mile, and actually the whole section 14, there wasn't an awful lot, except that when you got to the north end, the bottom was, 8 to 10 feet wide compared to the lower end.
Yeah.
So it was after that in sections 11 and stuff where there was more stuff, just like there is east of me on 6 lower.
Well, we appreciate your concerns.
I think you need to look at that 6% interest you're charging for warrants on projects that are in place. I think that's something you guys set. There was a time, probably when it was raised up, when other interest was 18%. Right now, what can you get on even a 36-month CD, 0.4%?
Yeah.
Farmers can borrow money at 3.5%. So why are we paying 6% on something we have no control over?
Probably when you were on the board, it was 8%.
It could have been, but we didn't have that many that we...
It's to entice the contractors to forgive, they're not always getting paid right away. So if they're able to purchase the warrants, it helps.
Yeah, a lot of them at that time tipped the contractors, and that's like Rick said, if he had a chance to take that warrant, he'd take that at 6%, because he's got land going in there, it makes a break even for him. But that's not being even offered to a contractor right now.
Once they're levied, I don't think that 6% is outlandish. We don't want to be the bank. The laws around drainage payments are antiquated and
Yes.
software's by the law, so.
And software is very difficult.
It's difficult rules with the interest collections and everything, so I'd rather not be a banker for payment of loans.
And my suggestion is if you have legal drainage problems, contact Jim Hamilton out of Pocahontas County. His dad was one of the top and actually helped write a lot of the drainage laws.
Heard of
Are you
him.
referring to Jim Hudson?
Yeah, Hudson, I'm sorry.
Heard of him.
And I worked with him on the drainage law committee with, let's over by Vincent, who was the Secretary of Agriculture, Dale Cochran.
Thanks, Janet.
And I was on the committee with him and Hudson, so.
Alrighty, well, we'll
So if you can
look
take a
it
look at
through.
that, I'd appreciate it. If nothing else, find a way to help Kim get these levies expedited so we can get them done in September. Not
Absolutely.
drag them another year.
What we plan.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, thank you much.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
Alright, Ben,
Morning.
morning.
I've got the one item on the agenda today to approve a quote from Blacktop Service to repair the south 4,000 foot of Shelton Park Road. I don't know if you guys have been out there lately.
Mhm.
The north end of it is holding up pretty well, almost all the way down to, the half-mile line. But the south end has heaved and boiled. We went in this past summer and dug out 20 locations and did some French draining to try and help that problem. Talked to...
What are the shape of the ditches along that road?
The ditches are in really good shape.
Are they?
I mean, we've got a nice profile on that whole stretch. Some of the material that we pulled out this past summer was wet, stunk. I don't know if there's a second shelf about 4 or 5 feet down where there's an old road bed that was never properly ripped up and destroyed.
It's holding water.
That might be holding water from draining out, so that's why we were trying to cut in and do French drain locations, throughout that stretch of the road. But I talked to, Wagner's, I believe, week before last, and asked them to come out and take a look at the road and shoot me a proposal to repair it. They came back with this one that's $44,000 worth of, double chip seal, as well as up to, they estimated 200 tons of asphalt at $125 a ton, to repair those areas that we had cored out. And then put the double chip on top of everything, obviously, for that south 4,000 feet. But I guess, I talked briefly with Bruce. I mean, this is kind of our last straw for this stretch of road. If this doesn't repair it, the county's option is probably gonna be to cut it off at the half-mile line and grind it back to a gravel for the south half-mile.
The last time we did something a couple of years ago, it sure didn't hold the way.
We did an autoseal at that time. It was an experiment I talked to Todd about. Quite a few counties throughout the state of Iowa were doing autoseal projects at the time. They were advertised as a 7 to 10 year, alternative to a paved road. Obviously, in the past 3 years, we've done some routine maintenance with, pavement doctor out of Fort Dodge to repair the pop-outs. It gets heavy traffic between, ag traffic that's trying to bypass going through town, people that are coming recreationally to stay for the weekend. It's a lot of heavy traffic. I think every high schooler takes that road to get to school, and lately they've been doing burnouts at all of our core locations, trying to see if they can peel out additional.
Nice.
But, we're trying to get that repaired. I know Conservation is happy that it's a dust-free road, which is what we originally advertised the autoseal as, and it's still a dust-free road. It's just not in as good a shape as what we want, so that's where the quote from Blacktop Service is roughly $70,000 to go in and repair the south.
So this will be done before the heavy traffic of camping starts, I'm assuming?
I told them, so last year when we redid C-20 north of Bode and west, I had set that money aside in maintenance, and we ended up using farm to market money to do that repair. So I've got an extra $200,000 sitting in asphalt, maintenance.
So you got the money in the budget?
That would cover, that would more than cover
I
this.
just, I asked, Blacktop, I said, this has gotta be done before July 1.
What's the total on this then, with your...
So, it's, 44,000.
550 plus the 213.
That's my question.
752.
44,550 for the double chip seal, as well as up to 25,000 in blacktop.
And it's, for your whole description, the double chip seal's the southern part?
The double chip seal is to go from where we ended the chip seal years ago, which is just south of the park entrance. You can feel just a little bit of a dip when you drive it. It's to start there with double chip and run south to Wildcat Road.
And then, 13,752 is for?
That is the, that was just an alternative. The 13,752 was an alternative to do just a single chip seal.
Okay, so you're...
You wouldn't be
Two different
doing that.
options,
Okay.
or is it two options to get?
It's option 1 and 2.
So basically, you're looking at the best...
So I was doing that wrong, I was
Okay.
trying to add this up.
So you're looking at the first option as the best option, and that's the
The
44,550.
44,550.
Would be a better-
As well as the 25,000 of patching where we cored out. Basically, that's putting a base down for the chip seal to go on top of.
That'd be 69,550, so his 70,000 is not, yeah.
Just guess.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so, but I haven't had a chance to talk to Todd since I got the quote and turned that in on Thursday. But,
This won't pacify Carl as blacktop.
no, he still sends me text messages wanting me to change that road to Carl Mattis Drive.
Oh!
Or Carl Mattis Lane.
Yeah.
Every year he was always, are we gonna have that in the budget for?
Yeah.
And even though the out-of-scale thing didn't maybe work as well as Ben and I had hoped, I think that's
Right.
fair.
Yeah.
I have had a lot of positive feedback from the people that use Sheldon, that
Mhm.
it's not just a
Gravel, where you just get totally covered with dust when you get
Yeah.
there.
People do appreciate that, even the dust.
Floats
When it was
across the
gravel,
ground.
when there was a west wind and somebody's buying that road, it'd just blow onto that bathhouse and blow
Yeah.
onto campers and
That'd be very
people
miserable.
appreciate it.
Theoretically, then, this is better than that, whatever that kind of
So
experimental thing.
Yeah, the Auto Seal was using a different asphalt emulsion. It was, what they call the foaming emulsion, and then they used 2 lifts of, first lift was 3/4 of an inch rock, and the second one, I think they said was 5/8 inch, I don't know, it was
Yeah.
a mile that they had. But with the chip seal, they used 3/8 inch. So the reason we went with an auto seal is because it was promoted as a thicker lift than
Right.
double chip.
Same with the other, yeah.
But it just didn't
But
hold.
basically,
Frost boils.
the base gave way, that's why it didn't
I never
hold.
drive on that road, so I wouldn't know.
And that's
The
what
soft
we
spots
went
in the middle of the north lane, and over here's another inch, and you're going down there.
Trying to get
Yeah.
the...
That's kinda how you drive anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, it's not a problem. Ditch to ditch, sometimes you stay on the road. Yeah, you stay out of the ditch.
I don't know, the only other option that I thought of is that if this doesn't work, you get a tiling contractor like Jensen or somebody to come in and
Pull that along the ditch?
run a 5-inch tile right down the middle of the road.
Is that something maybe we should do first?
You can. We wouldn't be able to do
Do
this
this
before
also.
the end of the year.
Yeah.
How many of those, trench drain type things did you put in that area?
Roughly 20, 25.
Did you really?
Somewhere in there.
And that was recently?
That was last August.
Okay, but that was since this other...
Yeah, this was after.
I remember the story on that. It was maybe promoted a little better than it was, or maybe it was the conditions that you said, Ben, that it was put over, the other stuff.
No, I mean, there was probably 20 counties out there that...
I know, I remember the story on it, but
Project.
you've also done some improvement, 'cause speaking of drainage, you've done a bunch of drainage improvement then, that would hopefully,
I hope it would relieve it.
yeah, so keep those, if you wanna call them frost boils, or things that disrupt the road surface.
Essentially, what this is turning into is what we did with, drag strip road,
Yeah.
you know.
And that's been better.
Yeah, I mean, we did an asphalt overlay here recently, but that had 25 years of chip seals on it
Mhm.
and continual maintenance.
Yeah.
That's where we're at with this one right now.
So are you interested in putting a tile down the middle of it, or on the side of it, before you put the money into it?
I'm gonna leave it up to him to think if it'd be beneficial or not.
Let me talk to Gary Jensen
I'm wondering if you could put one on the east side of the road and run it down towards the ravine over there.
At the north end, is that what you're talking?
Well, from the north, go towards, or from the south, go towards the north where we can drain it. We have all them French tile out, I wondered if it would help pull the water away from the center. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
Gents or one of the tile guys would know more about it than...
Right.
But it doesn't hold a lot of water when it's...
No, I mean, that's why it's baffling that the road was wet last year when we tore it out.
It shouldn't, it's a dry year.
Yeah.
It shouldn't have...
Been wet.
It shouldn't have been wet.
But some places in the hillside will seep more.
What's the approximate distance of, if you did tile that?
That's right, 4,000 feet.
The short mile?
400
The
feet.
short mile. 4,000 times $2.50 a foot, probably,
At least, maybe three,
maybe being you're going in through a road,
maybe three.
Right.
$12,000.
Plus yeah, but you're gonna put that kind of money into...
70,000 in it.
70 in pavement.
Well, I understand Bruce's thought, that you've got the French drains, but if you give that a better outlet...
Access to get rid
That
of...
if it's seeping out of that, and it can get into an actual tile structure and get away, then you want it to stay drier, obviously.
Right. If I run a tile down the middle of the road, I'm not gonna be doing...
No, you're gonna have some
No,
settling.
no, but maybe, did you say what, east ditch, possibly?
On the shoulder.
You just dump it out into the road ditch, is what you do with if you ran a tile down the middle of the
You don't
road.
hook them to a field tile?
I think there's one field tile in that whole stretch.
No,
And that's
there's no,
north of
intakes.
Yeah.
There's no intakes in the ditches or anything?
What's that? And that's between a half a mile and the park entrance,
Yeah.
north of the high school.
Right.
Majority of that...
Let me get this right.
West field
French
is high.
drains have no tile in them, are they dirt? Okay, go ahead.
That majority of that first section of that field tile, or field, is sitting up here and the road's down here. What would you do if you tiled down on that side where there's not much of a ditch?
I got a good ditch on...
On the west side?
On the south half a mile where I've got issues, I've got good ditch on both sides.
Okay.
Unless we can fall there, because water doesn't sit there.
It doesn't sit
in
It's
the
not heavy
ditch,
rain.
yeah.
It's-
Even with heavy rains, you don't have water sitting there.
Sorry, okay.
Well, when you do your French drain,
Mhm.
do you outlet that a tile into the road ditch, or is it just a rock?
It's rock that's outletted into the road ditch, so, I mean...
So you're already
you-
pretty much addressing it.
Yeah, you pour back until you think you've fixed the problem. Sometimes we cut all the way across the road, some places we cut to the middle of the road, and then we backfilled it with a porous material.
Yeah.
We used pea gravel and, topped
Washed rock.
off with with washed rock, and then added some millings and some finer material to try and pack the top back in.
Sounds like you pretty well addressed the drainage problems the best you can.
Well, that's why I asked, this is something they've done since then.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so...
Well, do you wanna put this on hold for a week until, or do you wanna get,
I think we can go ahead and prove this, and I'll talk to...
talk with Gents and
talk
see
with
what,
Gents and-
or, Tyler, I think you get some
Yeah,
ideas,
not specifically just Gents, but yeah, talk to a couple Tylers and see what they think.
what their recommendation would be.
I'll make a motion to, move ahead with the repair work to, what is that name of that road?
Sheldon Park.
Sheldon Park Road. South half, Sheldon Park Road.
I'll second that.
So, going ahead with it, you're talking the 44,550 and the 25,
Yes.
And possible any other kind of drainage work you
and
can
then any
do
drainage.
that you feel necessary.
So we have a motion and a second on that, any other discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carried. I guess you can just let us know what, one of them, whoever, if they wanna all look at it.
Yeah, if you feel it's beneficial, it sounds like you pretty well addressed the problem already.
I'm getting that feeling, and you can see, and also, it sounds like expediency to get this done prior to the end of June, so you throw in a tiling project on that, muddies the water.
Well, it puts it off a
We're
year.
running down the shoulder.
Yeah.
If we're just running the tile down the shoulder, then it's no problem with continuing to move forward.
Yeah.
Put it down the shoulder right over into Todd's new camping area, they'd have a little pool area
Yeah.
for the kids.
Have a little pond, make a little pond. Make a little pond.
What do you think, Todd? Not so much? All right,
Our doctors are out there.
our doctors are up here.
Yeah, yeah.
What are you thinking?
Thanks, Ben. Hey, kudos to the cost-effective shoulder reclamation machines that run up and down.
Yeah.
And I told Tom, that is,
Tom's done quite a bit.
that is,
They work pretty good.
it's awesome. It's awesome.
Sorry.
Is that with the disc?
We were in
No,
drainage.
it's just a, kind of a homemade blade, blade, and they made this years ago.
Good morning, all.
And it just,
So you put it on the end of the...
Put it on the roof tractor, and you drive down the shoulder, and it pulls the stuff from the ditch side to the roadside.
Thank you. You're still wearing the hawk face, huh?
Yeah, and it's, you know, you'll see a little dirt on that side of the road, but then as we get into spring, of course, we'll get some rain, and we get into spring, and the big A's and sprayers and tractors run up and down.
Right here?
If you wanna get up in the middle, you're welcome to.
Edge rutting rock.
Come on out.
It fills that.
That way you gotta,
So you don't have to do
It's
that?
really
you take
nice.
a chance, you wanna swing one of them microphones around? Otherwise we get scolded that we didn't get year-long
Yeah,
voice on.
Humboldt shops.
Smile, 'cause you're on camera.
You did that perfect.
It's me first.
So, a couple weeks ago, when we were visiting with Michelle, she lined this up, have you guys come up and give a presentation to us, so we'll give you the floor.
Yeah, so, we're just kind of in town to speak with the new ME, do a little bit of training with him. So we're just gonna stop by, and I have a couple handouts that, mostly goes over like Iowa code, just so you guys can reference it, just in, terms of,
All right.
I got it. Grab one too, but, so we just have a little bit of information here on just kind of the difference between what a medical examiner's role is and then what the medical examiner investigator or the MEI's role is. And then just the Iowa code, in terms of the appointment process for both the medical examiner and their investigator, some of the administrative rules, and then we get asked a lot about, in terms of requesting an autopsy, like what are mandatory autopsies and what are recommended ones, and then kind of why we recommend some of those. So I guess just to start, kind of the difference between the medical examiner or the ME, and their investigator. So the medical examiner, each county in Iowa has an appointed medical examiner for that county. These are licensed physicians, so either MDs or DOs. They're appointed to their position by the County Board of Supervisors. And then, because a lot of times they're in full-time practice, they may also use deputy medical examiners. So those deputies can function in the same capacity in terms of performing the death investigation, signing death certificates, and also signing the cremation permits. And they're going to potentially go out to the scene and do the death investigation, or they may rely more on their investigators for that. And then they're going to help determine when an autopsy is warranted. They're going to certify those death certificates and sign cremation permits. So for any non-natural death, so it's a homicide, a suicide, an accidental death, those are all going to be signed by a medical examiner. Just a regular, like family practice physician cannot sign those types of death certificates. So the ME, an important role for them would be signing any non-natural death certificate that wouldn't come to our office for an autopsy. And then a big thing that they do as well is authorize cremations. So the cremation authorization, that's really the last check that anyone has to make sure that it shouldn't have been an ME case, or that something wasn't missed before that body is cremated, and all that the body and the evidence is lost. So they're going to review all those cremation permits that they receive, and if they did not already do the death investigation, then they're gonna make sure that there's an appropriate cause and manner of death, and there's no concerns about the case before they sign that. And then with the medical examiner investigator, the MEI, so each county kind of varies. Most counties in Iowa have multiple investigators. It really depends on how many people they need to cover their call schedule. So if they have investigators that work full-time, they may need more investigators to help provide that 24/7 coverage. Iowa code does list at least 2 years of experience as a nurse or medical care provider, so we have a lot of people with like an EMT, paramedic background, nursing background. Law enforcement can be appointed as well, or just kind of by the discretion of the state medical examiner, we can allow other appointments. So the investigator is appointed by the county board of supervisors, but they also must be approved by our office at the state medical examiner. And so whether you're an ME or an MEI, there's some paperwork that they have to complete, send us a copy of their license, we'll do kind of like a quick background check and make sure that there's no red flags. Also for an investigator, prior to or within 2 years of appointment, they need to go to a death investigation course. Historically, this has always been through St. Louis. They provide like a 4-day course in different death investigation practices. Starting this summer, our office is also going to hold a 3-day course, which will be kind of the equivalent to St. Louis. So that'll be an option for investigators as well, hopefully help with some of those travel expenses, and of course, we're looking at a lower cost than just like the basic course fee of St. Louis as well. They also don't have to travel as far or be away from family or employment as long. So within those 2 years, they should be at some type of death investigation course, which is good for the, Board of Supervisors to know just in terms of like funding and helping to pay for that. And then prior to or within 5 years of appointment, they should get certified by the American Board of Medical Legal Death Investigators. This is like a national organization, so after they have the appropriate training and they've done a number of courses, they're able to sit for an exam. And then if they pass that, they're considered registry certified. So that all is based on the amount of hours they're on call and the amount of cases that they get. For investigators, though, they cannot certify death certificates. They can also not sign cremation permits. So they can do the scene investigation on their own under that supervision of the medical examiner, but then they'll kind of get in contact with that medical examiner, discuss the case, any concerns, whether or not an autopsy should be ordered, or how to possibly certify that death certificate. Questions on kind of the different responsibilities for the two?
How long is the school good for? I mean, is it, once they've taken them is it for good?
Yep.
Or
yeah.
they don't have to go back every 2 to 4 years just to re-certify, do they?
Yeah, so it's just a one-time thing.
One time, all right, good.
For that certification of the ABMDI, though, there is like continuing education that they would do for that, so there could be online courses or different things like that. Board will decide, what types of courses give credit, so there's some Con Ed for that, but it's just a one-time death investigation course.
So do they get all those credentials are handled through the hospital, I'm assuming? They don't give us a certificate that we put up here, or, I don't know what I'm asking.
Once they get the certificate, they usually forward that to our office and we keep it on file just to make sure, in terms of like tracking everyone in Iowa, we can kind of track who's completed that or who hasn't, and I think we're starting to kind of keep a little bit closer eye on that than kind of what we've done in the past.
Good. I'm just trying to figure out if we're supposed to know that Sam or Mike or Kenny are our people. As long as they've been to the school there, we're good.
Yep.
Perfect.
Any other questions on that? So then, kind of next is just like the Iowa code and administrative rules just pertaining to kind of those things I just mentioned, like how they're appointed, what their responsibilities are. And then, as we kind of move on, we get into kind of like, why do you do an autopsy, or, you know, who gets an autopsy? So ultimately, Iowa Code 331.802, lists a wide variety of scenarios, under which a case would fall under the jurisdiction of the medical examiner. So basically, we're looking at any out-of-medical facility deaths, so including people that die at home. Those would be medical examiner cases, and then again, any non-natural death, so any homicide, suicide, accidental death, or if manner of death is kind of in question, that would also be a medical examiner case. And then kind of determining whether or not an autopsy should be ordered. There are mandatory autopsies and then also recommended ones. So in terms of the mandatory autopsies, you know, obviously we're looking at homicides just to get good documentation for any court proceedings. Again, if they're not sure what manner of death should be, you know, the circumstances under which someone died, you would send for an autopsy. Identification is the most important thing that we do, so we can have the death certificate amended, but we don't want to misidentify someone. So if there's any question at all when the investigator or ME is on the scene about who that individual is, and especially if, you know, there's been some decomposition or, you know, other significant injuries to the body, that would certainly be a required autopsy. Any children under 2, unless they have like a well-diagnosed you know, medical condition, that would include those babies, you know, in the unsafe sleep environment, should be sent in. If somebody dies work or a farm-related death, a drowning would be a diagnosis of exclusion, so we would want to do a full autopsy in those circumstances. If there's a question about any type of possible poisoning, we would need some idea of like what we're looking for in order to request the appropriate toxicology, but we would want to do a full workup to see, you know, the findings on their body and then also their toxicology. And then any pilots, or if somebody dies during a natural disaster like the recent tornadoes, those would be required autopsies as well. And then, like, for our recommended autopsies, again, people that are younger, if they don't have a well-diagnosed medical condition, we highly recommend motor vehicle crashes. Sometimes the external injuries aren't always as evident, but there could be pretty extensive internal injuries. There could be a possibility of litigation, especially if more than one person is in the vehicle, or there's more than one vehicle involved. There could be a question about who was actually the driver of the vehicle. If people are ejected, one person may survive, the other person may be deceased. Also, for toxicology, Iowa State Patrol is really interested in toxicology findings for like blood alcohol level, if there's any other drugs in somebody's system, so we'll include that as part of the autopsy. And anything else? Suicides, those we highly recommend. Sometimes cause and manner seem kind of evident, but a lot of times those are our most difficult cases that we deal with. Families can have a hard time accepting that the death is a suicide, or there could be some like questions or maybe some concerns by either family or law enforcement that maybe somebody else was actually involved in the death. And so sometimes those seem straightforward initially, but then they can become quite complicated. So it's always good just to send those, and then if there is any questions down the line, our pathologists have done a thorough documentation to make sure there's no additional injuries on the body or nothing weird shows up in their toxicology. Any drug or alcohol-related death, again, is important to send. Toxicology is important. We'll send off different types of specimens for the toxicology. Our pathologists are able to interpret those results in relationship to like what their other natural diseases are. And then that way, if toxicology does come back negative or at low levels, they have the other findings from the autopsy to hopefully determine cause of death. If anyone's involved in a fire, or there's a concern for any like carbon monoxide, smoke inhalation, we would do those cases. A lot of times there can be some extensive, thermal injuries to the body where identification may be a concern, or we can do the carbon monoxide testing in-house just to make sure that was or was not a factor in the death as well.
Yeah, the other thing about fire-related or smoke or soot inhalation is the manner of death depends on why the fire started. So if it was, a person fell asleep while smoking, that would be an accidental death, but if it was started by somebody else, then it would be a homicide. And sometimes fire officials, when they're initially investigating the death, might think it's an accident, or a lot of times it's undetermined, so they're not quite certain why it started, because a lot of these structures these people are in are completely burned down to the ground, and so it's difficult for them to find the source of the fire. And so, obviously, obviously for any homicide case, we always want to autopsy it. So, me personally, I would try to autopsy every single fire-related fatality if possible, just because it is a potential that that manner of death is a homicide.
Anything else you can about mandatory or recommended, or questions that you have about those, or why we do them?
Yeah.
Mandatory. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, from a forensic pathologist, it's kind of like, well, I think every case should be autopsied, right? It's like going to Midas. Every time you go to Midas, you always get your muffler changed. So I think, you know, try to autopsy as many as possible, because the autopsy is just part of the death investigation. So you have the field investigation or the scene investigation, and then the autopsy is kind of the second component of that investigation. So an investigation is never absolutely complete unless you do the autopsy. Now, sometimes just going to the scene is enough to determine cause and manner of death, but it's always a little bit better if you have that autopsy with you in your pocket to help to determine why the person died. Now, I know from your perspective, you know, you gotta take into account the taxpayers' money as well, so, you know, there has to be some type of balance between try to autopsy as many cases as possible, but also make sure you're using the county's money in the appropriate way. So, you know, it's a difficult situation for you guys, difficult for the county and me, because they're kind of stuck in the middle of it, but easier for me because we, you know, recommend autopsies in as many cases as possible. So.
I think one thing Dr. Rosica stressed was to make sure that they all had the training, and anytime there was training available, to make sure that they had the opportunity to go. And unfortunately, we're the ones that usually get that once a month. We have, okay, the payment on those, but in order to keep all of that stuff straight, they have to go to the schooling that they have to go to.
Yeah.
That's why you're here.
Yeah.
That, and we got a bill every time we turn around, here's an autopsy bill. Why are we paying all these? What are they for? So this explains
Yep.
it.
Yep. Yeah, so there are actually a very few cases which are actually mandatory. I mean, basically homicide, on-the-job death, any potential homicide case, any child under 2, which really probably should be under 18, because you don't want a 16-year-old kid that just suddenly dies on the basketball court without knowing why he died, because there could be hereditary things. And that's basically it. That's all that's mandatory. But I think the important thing to remember is when we investigate deaths, it's not just simply figuring out why the person died for the family. We're trying to figure out why the person died so we can prevent other people from following in the same footsteps as that person died. So we're kind of a preventative medicine field. We serve the public in addition to serving the decedent and their family. If we find out that a lot of people are, you know, driving and getting into motor vehicle crashes and they have no natural diseases, the car's operating properly, the roadway is great, they're not drunk or they're not under the influence of drugs, then there's probably something else going on, and that something else is typically distracted driving, texting on the phone, which is actually somewhat difficult to identify from a law enforcement perspective, but that's one of the differentials. And so if we rule out all that other stuff, then law enforcement kind of comes to the conclusion, well, this person was probably distracted, and then, you know, the legislators can create laws that, you know, prohibit texting and driving or whatever. So I think that's the important thing to remember, is we're always in the preventative medicine field, trying to prevent other people from following in the same footsteps as their patients. Now, unfortunately, that costs money, but...
Right. Well, we appreciate your willingness to come up here and do this presentation. We appreciate all of you for your help.
Thank you for doing what you do.
Yeah, well, thanks for inviting us. I've never personally met Board of Supervisors.
Yeah.
This is great, we talked about it for a number of years. You know, a lot of times we'll come up to the counties and meet the county MEEs or the MEIs, but, you know, it's more than just them that are part of this. It's Board of Supervisors, it's law enforcement officials, it's county attorneys, defense attorneys. I mean, but it's all female directors, you know, they're all part of this death investigation process. So the more people we can bring to the table and sit down and discuss what we do, I think the better the situation is. And, yeah, I mean, I sit in my office in Ankeny, and I only see the world through my office. I don't see the world through your office or through a lot of the county ME's eyes. So, you know, it's just good to get different people's perspective, and I think by doing that, we can sit and chat and try to figure out what's best for your county or what's best for the state of Iowa. So, yeah, we really appreciate coming.
Perhaps you should get around to more counties.
Yeah, well, you know, we do offer an ME 101 to the counties, where we'll come up and kind of teach. It's a longer course, maybe, 3 or 4 hours, where we kind of talk a little bit about basic death investigation, Iowa code, why we do what we do. So we'd be happy to, you know, any county that offers, we usually come up. At least Jessica comes.
Well, we just had ISAC school last week down in Des Moines, which would be a lot closer for you, but most of the supervisors from around the state, and they're always looking for somebody to do programs of an hour or hour and a half.
I was thinking, I think I should...
So here you are.
Recommend it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you bring cinnamon rolls or cookies, it brings a lot more people there.
I think the state employees were prohibited.
Well, we would never turn them down in this room, just so you know, if you ever come back.
We could turn the TV off.
Right.
Well, we do appreciate it,
Yeah.
and I guess we just were, when we saw that, you know, we make that appointment, we just started asking a few more questions, and Michelle said, well, see if we can get them up here.
Yeah, absolutely. Come up anytime you
Just
guys
like that
are,
works.
so.
We thank you all very much.
We can even give an entertaining lecture on forensic pathology, you know, the
That would be interesting.
guns and knives, cases, interesting cases.
Yeah, that's...
Well, last week, we listened to somebody out east
Yeah, he was still in his basement bunker out
that
east.
did something on the statistics of the census, and it was like,
Oh, wow.
whew. So I would,
This would be more...
Yeah, anytime.
Sandy will reach out to you, she's on the
Absolutely.
committee to help line stuff up, so.
Yeah, we give talks to high school kids, so, you know, if the local high school is interested in forensic science or death investigation. One of the biggest concerns for me as a deputy state medical examiner is just simply the lack of people going into forensic pathology. There's only about 400 to 500 forensic pathologists in the United States, and there's a need for about twice that. And there's an even bigger need for those forensic pathologists to come to Iowa. So, you know, if I can ever motivate or encourage some local Iowa high school kid to go to medical school and become a forensic pathologist and stick around Iowa, I think it's well worth it, so.
Good.
Are you a forensic pathologist?
I am a forensic pathologist, yes.
See more of you then.
Yeah, more me, yeah, my concern,
Yeah.
from a selfish standpoint.
Yeah, usually you don't hear that, but actually you do need more.
Yeah, and I'm an Iowan, so.
Well, good.
We have everybody that works in our office has some Iowa connection, so, you know, I always tell people, the people that grow up on the coast, they don't have a lifelong dream to come back to come to Iowa to work.
No, they
So,
don't.
you have to have either a tie, right, family, your wife is from Iowa, I'm from Iowa, so.
But it just kinda grows on you.
Oh, I love Iowa.
Other than January, February, and March.
Right.
That makes you mentally tough, though, you know what I mean?
Right,
That's
that's
true.
right.
So.
That is true.
But that carrot, when they say it's gonna be 71, we're all looking out the window, I'm ready.
Right.
We do appreciate you very
Thank
much.
you.
Very much.
Thank you for coming. Thanks, Michelle.
You're welcome.
Thanks all of you guys.
All right.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
You bet, have a great day.
Thank you.
for coming up.
Okay. Todd's still here, yep?
Yep, he is. He's hiding in the back.
All right, well, we had our joint work session, Wednesday? Yeah, Wednesday night. And if I wanna turn it over to you as to what's your recommendation, or what's your board brought to...
Okay, I just feel like, we had a really productive discussion last Wednesday. I feel like it was consensus opinion to pursue the state ARPA funding. I believe, Rick can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like 1.2 billion.
Yeah, a portion of that money is gonna go to recreational operational.
So I think, at least from my understanding, the two boards agreed to, apply for funding for option one with the dam project in conjunction with applying for a connection from Webster County's Prairie Rivers Trail to our Three Rivers Trail.
It's kind of a joint project.
And make it a joint project, a regional type project, which should help your application, the scoring a little bit, I would guess.
So when their board made that recommendation,
Yep.
we invited Todd to come over here to basically make the formal, request to the
I
board.
guess, I was just here to see if you guys had any more questions for me.
Well,
I just
the
wasn't
only-
sure what discussion you were gonna have this morning.
The only thing I would like to see in your application is something formally from the Conservation Board from Webster County that they will
Yep.
connect, because they're...
Their intentions.
Their intentions are to get to Badger by 2024, with a paved trail, I do believe. And then, they're still 2 miles from our county line, so we want that commitment from them. If we bring it to the county line, they will bring it to the county line.
Matt Cosgrove has assured me that will not be an issue.
Well, get that in writing.
Yeah.
Get it with our
I know
application.
that I kinda laid the groundwork for that.
I'm sure you have, but I'd like to see
Yeah, I
that
get it.
commitment from them,
Yep,
Yeah.
so that they know at the state that, yes, it is.
yep, agreed.
They usually go through Midas, and I think they cut back on the one in Kennedy last year a little bit.
They had to tweak it, they had
Yeah.
quite a few issues with that, but I think in the end, the last time I talked to Matt, is they're ready to go. Get that completed here yet this spring, is what he told me. But it's been a difficult, yeah, it's an interesting discussion. If you ever want to talk to Matt, he gets pretty fired up about that one, it was a challenge.
So, not that you know, but would their intentions be from going from Kennedy Park just down the blacktop? Or are they gonna cut across country?
They're cutting across, they want to tie in the winery, Soldier Creek
Well, that's what I wondered.
Run by there, people can stop off and
Yeah.
have a glass of wine and be on their way. So I believe they're coming into Badger,
From the
paralleling the blacktop. which is-
Paragon, it's got Paragon, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably less traffic too,
Yeah.
Yeah.
maybe a little less.
Yep,
Mhm.
so that's my understanding anyway of their route.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do they have that on that road north to that, what is that, North 27th or whatever that?
By
You know where it gets, like-
32nd.
By the airport there and
Yeah,
stuff.
32nd, yeah. 'Cause they have that on that road coming up to there.
And they also have it out past the swimming pool.
Well, I think they're...
Yeah, they're past
That's
school,
what I'm
and
talking
they
about.
go to the soccer field.
That's what I thought.
Yep, they go to the soccer field and then back down the cold storage
That's
road.
Paragon that runs that big
Yep.
curve.
They're gonna run
Yep.
basically straight north, but they're also gonna have a little jog that goes west to hook onto the
Other
trail
side.
by the soccer fields.
Okay.
Yep. So it goes down to...
All right.
All right, well, I'll make a motion for a show of support for conservation, I guess I would say that, from the board, for option one on the Reasoner Dam with the tying in the trail project with Webster County,
I'll second that.
All right, and I
for
would
the ARPA funding.
put that as this is a proposal, we're reaching out to try to
Yeah.
get the funding. No one's writing a check for 20-some
This
million.
is just getting our name in the hat down at the State House to acquire funds, and it's gonna be basically a vote of support, so that they know that the board is in full support of the project. You know, had you had a split vote of 2-3, it probably wouldn't look good, but I don't know how everybody's gonna vote, but I think it'd be a good thing for the board to get behind, and,
Yep.
I would agree. If we can get state money for it, hey, let's and if it's out there, there's 1.2 billion, let's go.
It's
Reach.
absolutely worth
Reach,
pursuing.
Yeah.
we ought to try to reach for it, if we don't, somebody
Reach for
else
the stars,
will.
as you
Yeah,
say.
exactly, yeah.
If we don't get it, Des Moines will, so
Right.
it's time to get it out of Des Moines and get back in the country.
Said this the other night, but I think we would be foolish not to at least give it a shot.
Try.
Mhm.
Try.
Because if you make it a joint or a cooperative effort with Webster County, that's gonna look,
Looks way more attractive.
pretty attractive, it'll be a pretty strong application, so
Mhm.
we'll see.
All right, with that, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That is unanimous. Thank you, Todd.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Todd, we appreciate all the things
And
you've
thank
done.
Lord again
Yeah.
for all of their arguing and, I mean, it's been, sometimes we've been at each other and, you know, because everybody
Yeah.
has their own opinion. I guess we're hopefully moving forward, so.
I know they appreciate this group's willingness to sit down and visit with them, so there is that line of communication, and that's how things are gonna end up moving forward, so thank you all for that.
Well, we
Thank
all
you,
want what's
Todd.
best for Humboldt County, and they do, we do,
I like
we
the
just
trail
gotta do it.
thing a lot more than the dam.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The dam thing.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you,
Thanks
Todd.
again. Bye.
I have nothing to add. I think it's a good idea.
Okay, the next thing on our list there, this was brought up by Dean, just for information, and I guess, was it you, Rick, that made the comment?
Yeah, we actually hired these, two individuals a year ago or so, but at that time, they didn't have access to this, Chevy pickup of animals, and I think we want this,
Make it official.
to make it official,
Put it into the minutes.
so they are covered under liability reasons and,
Dean did tell me that, Scott Kern was aware that they were. I said, well, the only reason that Rick had made a comment was it's in the official, minutes, so that if there was an accident and they were driving our
at that time, they
vehicle.
were using their own personal vehicles.
So, he said that's good. He didn't have any issues, so we put it on the agenda. So, with that,
I'll make a motion to renew the hire of these, Amber Williams and Jeremy Williams, for our animal control officers, which allows them also to use our, Chevy pickup,
Old deputy truck.
the old deputy pickup with the topper on it.
that they've converted,
Yeah, it's an old one that's been sitting around that was still got some life in it,
they converted it over with the topper and some equipment in there that they
Yeah.
use, so.
so they have it ready to roll in
Bring
it,
the dog, or
for
whatever.
picking up dogs or,
But they have to still be gone through the dispatch, they're not
Yes.
gonna self-deploy,
Right.
it has to be a dispatch call to them.
or an officer.
Did we get a second?
Oh, second, I'm sorry, I was writing dispatch calling us.
All right, well, with that, we have a motion and
Me
a
and my
second
notes.
for the not rehire, but the
Renewal.
renewal of Amber Williams and Jeremy Williams, as the employees of our animal control people. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Well, we finally reached the committee report. Didn't know if we were gonna get there.
Took a while.
Okay. All right, on Tuesday, we had an in-person meeting for Kitty Cat Daycare. Yeah, pretty much just trying to figure out how it's still issue with, employees getting enough people. We had, McKinley Bailey there to explain again to the, our board. We're fine tuning that study that we were all talking about, exactly what we wanted. They, Michelle Slater, who's on our board too, and then Jim Murray and Heather, the director, went over to Gilmore City, to their daycare, kind of seeing what works for them, what doesn't work, to see if there's something we can do with that. And then, so we're just fine tuning that study on what we can do as far as how much we can charge, what would be a better way to use, the facility and, where, the big thing with Gilmore is they have one big open area, where this is in rooms, and I guess it's hard, and I can see that, you know, you're working with kids that are toddlers, and all you have is a 2 or 3-year-old, and you don't have any interaction with adults. That's kind of an issue, so we're trying to figure out how we can do better on that, to be able to have a better atmosphere for the people that work there. So, we're getting there. What's the wrong one? Then I was at the Conservation Board meeting that night on the 16th. And that is it.
That's all?
That's all, that's it.
Well, I had 5 meetings on Wednesday the 16th, but only 2 of them for the county. The afternoon, we had the Humboldt County Housing, Corporation meeting. That was at 3 o'clock, and then I was over to the conservation meeting on the dam there at 6 o'clock. That's the 2 official.
Alrighty. I didn't have anything last week, of course, but I will go back to, Tuesday, the 8th of March. I did have an LAC/Public Safety Commission meeting that morning of Tuesday, the 8th.
Okay, on the 15th, I attended the monthly regional landfill meeting down in Fort Dodge, and then after that, we had the annual meeting with all the communities that bring their waste to Fort Dodge for our annual budget and annual meeting. There's no changes in cost. Costs all stayed the same except for in the household hazardous waste area. Some of the stuff went up a little bit due to the...
What would that be? What kind of...
Well, when you take like fluorescent light bulbs down there, batteries, or I shouldn't say batteries, but lithium batteries, paint, I didn't bring the cost list with me.
That's okay, I was just curious when you said, hazardous household, what...
That's what it is. You bring in basically anything that can't go to the landfill.
Okay.
Or it shouldn't go to the landfill rather than throw it in the bottom.
And they're at the mercy of whoever they're getting rid of it to
Yes, they're at
get
the
rid of
mercy
it.
of their suppliers that they come and get it, I guess.
Okay.
And then, but, what we call the tipping fee, which is the scale price, when you pull the scale and pay so much a ton, that stayed the same. Some of the communities, and I think even Humboldt counties went, or maybe it was Humboldt City, one of them went down to the census. They go by your census based on what you pay for the communities by your census. So, I mean, they have a maintenance type fee. And then, Humboldt County Housing on Wednesday afternoon, and then the conservation at 6 on Wednesday evening. So I had 3 meetings.
Did they ever get down at the landfill, did they get that slide figured out?
Oh, we're halfway there. It's a $2 million project to keep the land from sliding down the hill into Soldier, I can't think of the name of the creek, it isn't Soldier Creek. Can't remember the little stream that runs by there. But the process is ongoing. It's half paid for, it's over a 2-year period, and it's funded, so. But that's the case, it's not so much the garbage that's sliding, but the soil that was underneath the garbage sliding across some shale. When I say sliding, it's moved 4 feet in 20 years.
Right.
So it's not like it's a landslide.
Yeah.
And when I was visiting with one of the engineers, well, it moved a half an inch last year. I go, how can you tell that moved a half an inch? But he says, I'm an engineer.
Of course he is. Rick, are they still having the community, speaking of hazardous waste, community,
I think they will be doing that this summer
they
again.
usually do it late spring, early summer? You don't have any dates on that? That usually gets sent out so that they do know, that because they usually have a drop-off site for like you just mentioned.
I know we just lost our director from that area, and, we're retraining someone else currently who's going to. And they would be the ones that would be setting that up, and they never mentioned that at the last meeting.
How often do you have these meetings?
every month.
Okay, so you might know by...
I'll check out.
Okay,
Check on that.
'cause that's that's the thing, you don't, like Rick said, you don't wanna throw whatever in the bottom of the dumpster, they do have designated times, and you can take it down there anytime, you just...
Well, you gotta have an appointment.
You gotta have an appointment.
Yeah.
So
You have
it's
to call
easier
an appointment because-
when they have the, like, spring cleanup,
Mhm.
where per community, they can take
Yeah,
their...
and when they
stuff.
were going to this community, the community quite often had volunteers to help them because
Right,
they usually showed up with two people.
Right.
yeah,
And,
they get it, and they can accumulate quite a bit of stuff.
sometimes they can,
Yep, so it's just good to know that, so that it's done the way it's supposed to.
yeah.
All right. Tuesday, I had the Udmo Finance meeting, it was a conference call. Wednesday at 1:00, I had a ministerial board meeting, conference call for me. Then Wednesday night, I had the dam meeting over at the Conservation Board. Anything for you, Trish? I guess I would remind everyone, next week, we have our public hearings for the, budget for Ben's, was it 5-year plan? Wasn't there one other one?
Redistricting.
And the redistricting.
That is hard to say sometimes.
And our county budget,
Yeah,
Everything,
Yeah,
next week.
it's a big week.
so,
Secondary roads, and then...
That's that right? Is that
I
the
guess
other
my
one?
question is, we sent the redistrict stuff back down to them,
Is
and
it
it's gonna be
Oh, yeah, you
approved
did
next week,
some up here.
in our eyes.
That's all right, Dave, I'll
Yeah.
take
What if they don't approve it?
Well, this is their
I did it all
version.
over down there.
Yeah,
Couple of sections up there.
Well, I hope so, but I mean,
I mean, we didn't like it, we sent ours down there, and they didn't like ours, so they sent us theirs.
yeah, but they have more clout than we do, so they aren't gonna, I mean, they gotta stomp their feet more
And
and,
then we have Gary saying, well, a lot of you people don't have much area, and that's because the state took it away from us.
you know, and that was nothing that we,
And that's because of...
I'll be more than happy to take all of you with me, anytime you wanna go. Sandy, I might call you up when we go over by Odison or something, and we can
You've
look
got
at
the
drainage
biggest
stuff.
territory.
Always have.
But with the-
Got bigger.
I didn't get that.
at
Nobody lives out there.
10:02.
This was you, huh?
Yeah, I used to go all the way over
I
Wright
know,
County.
I thought maybe yours was, I mean, just by,
away from,
yeah, just by the look of the,
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
I mean, this is
Opposed, same
ridiculous
sign.
if you cut
Motion
that.
carried.